Welcome to the Flying Octopus Podcast, offering a new perspective on Red Wings hockey, as well as all the important news from around the NHL. And now, here are your hosts, Tony Wolak, Devin Little, and Evan Sabrin.
As we record today, on Thursday, June 5th, I thought it'd be a good time to reflect back on some major pop cultural history that somewhat involves the Detroit Red Wings. 40 years ago today was an iconic day. A day that will go down as a key moment in American history. It was not a Red Wings Stanley Cup. It was most definitely not a Maple Leafs Stanley Cup. We don't do ancient history on this show. That was 58 years for those of you counting at home. No, today was the day back in 1985 that Ferris Bueller decided to take the day off and go on a rampage through the streets of Chicago. I think older films like this, where people know that what you were talking about but weren't around when it came out at the time, such as you two, because I'm old as dirt, kind of really show what classics really truly are. Let's not forget, too, the most important part about this film as it pertains to the Red Wings. Ferris Bueller's buddy, Cameron Fry, played by the great Alan Ruck, who we all know from Succession, I'm assuming. He donned the famous Gordie Howe jersey throughout the movie. As a kid, I thought it was pretty cool to see a Red Wings jersey on a character in a major film at that age. Then I got to read this interesting tidbit on Twitter today. On June 5th, 1985, Ferris attended a Cubs game at Wrigley Field with Cameron and his girlfriend Sloane. Now, in real life on this date, the Cubs were playing the Atlanta Braves. That's the game you see on TV when Principal Rooney is looking for him at the pizza place. But the scene where Ferris catches the foul ball was filmed later that year in September 1985 against the Expos. At that time, both teams had similar powder blue jerseys. And you can't really tell when you're watching the film, let alone you're probably not even looking for it. But that was the way that John Hughes put that scene together through the magic of Hollywood films and editing. I thought I'd provide you guys with some useless pop culture information today, brought to you by the Flying Octopus Podcast. Welcome to episode 38. I am your co-host, Evan Sabrin, joined by my other co-hosts and partners in crime, Tony Wolak and Devin Little. Before we get started, I'd like to remind you where you can find us. Check us out on our YouTube channel at The Flying Octopod. Follow us on Twitter and Blue Sky at Flying Octopod. You can also listen to us on iTunes and Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts. On today's show, we'll discuss the latest rumors floating around the Dallas Stars star forward, Jason Robertson, and discuss whether or not General Manager Steve Yzerman should be kicking in the tires with his old pal Jim Nill on a potential trade between the two parties. Are there other prime targets out there? Yes, and Tony will definitely break down some of those names that the Red Wings could be interested via the trade route this summer. There's also some news out of the KHL this week that involves Red Wings prospect Dmitri Buchelnikov. Tony and Devin will dive deeper into what's really going on there, as we've seen conflicting reports about his status with his KHL team. We'll also take a look at Jesse Kiiskinen. The 19-year-old Finnish prospect signed his ELC with Detroit this past week. He was acquired by the Red Wings last offseason in a trade with the Nashville Predators. Kiiskinen played last season with HBK in Finland's top men's league and averaged nearly a point per game, 44 and 46. Those 44 points were the most of any under-20 skater in Finland's top professional league. And while we're on the topic of prospects, Devin will take a look at Swedish winger Victor Eklund in this week's draft prospect profile. So let's get into it, boys. We're all familiar with cryptic tweets in the hockey community. On Monday, the NHL Network's Kevin Weeks tweeted out a photo of American Airlines Arena with those double eye emojis, sending the hockey community into somewhat of a frenzy. The Stars are a team that may be looking to make some significant moves this offseason, and many have speculated that forward Jason Robertson could be on the trade block. Robertson, who is 25 years old, is in the last year of his contract with a $7.75 million cap hit, and you can safely assume he'll be looking for a raise. Dallas is a team that is considered a cup contender, but turnover seems to be on the horizon after they've lost in the Western Conference Finals for a third year in a row. Robertson does have ties to the Detroit area. He played Little Caesars here and is coming off back-to-back 80-point seasons, but he's also only 3 years removed from a 109-point campaign. Tony, should Yzerman kick the tires with his old buddy Jim Nill and see what it would take to get someone of Robertson's stature? And what do you think it would take to acquire someone like him?
I mean, absolutely. Yzerman should reach out to Jim Nill and just see what's going on there if Robertson is in fact on the block and just find out what, if anything, it would take to acquire him. I think if there's a player of that caliber, his name is floating out there, regardless of who it is, he always try to find out, what's real and what's not. Now, with Robertson, he is one of the many, many talented players who are, rumored to be potentially on the move this summer. And when you look at other names that have been thrown out there, Marco Rossi from the Minnesota Wild, his name's been mentioned in trade rumors. JJ Peterka from the Sabres, Bowen Byram also from the Sabres, Keandre Miller, Nick Hague, potentially Noah Dobson as well, Rasmus Anderson. It's interesting this summer because I feel like there is more talent on the trade block than at the top of the free agent class. Mitch Marner aside, clearly the belle of the ball for free agency this summer, but I do think that at the very least Yzerman should see what's going on there, and let's say in fact Dallas is looking to make a move. What are they looking for? Is it just cap space, or do they need to bolster another part of their roster? Do they need help on defense on the right side with Harley and Kiiskinen on the left? Do they want more depth at forward with potentially Jamie Benn and or Matt Duchene leaving via free agency? Unclear right now, but the Red Wings, they do have trade chips. They have a very, very deep prospect pool. And I've said this many times, not every prospect is going to play for the Red Wings. It's okay to deal from depth. They have the number 13 pick this year. They have, all their draft picks this year, an extra third, all the draft picks next year. There is potential for there to be, I'm going to use an overused business term here, but some synergy between the Red Wings and the Stars if they want to agree to a deal. Now, I think there might be some other players that I'd check in on first and prioritize if they're in fact available, but sure, yeah, and a 40-goal scorer doesn't come along on the trade block very often. Wouldn't you say so, Devin?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. And for my money, I've always been a huge Jason Robertson fan since I believe it was 2022, maybe the year he had his little contract holdout with Dallas that kind of led up to the beginning of the season. I was the bold guy in my fantasy league that decided to take him, even though he didn't have a contract yet. And then he signed like 5 days later, and he was Jason Robertson. So I got a really, really good player at a discount price. Now, having said that, I like that you bring up Mitch Marner because I think that this kind of goes hand in hand with that. The reason why so many people are lusting over this player going to the Red Wings, meaning Mitch Marner, is because there's this perceived lack of star power in the lineup. And to some extent, I believe it. But, seeing a name like Jason Robertson out there, along with others too, that you've mentioned there, Tony, it's Mitch Marner doesn't have a monopoly on star power this year. Obviously, you only have to give him a contract, whereas the other guys you'd have to make a trade for. But if it's star power, the Red Wings are really prioritizing this summer. It's not Mitch Marner or bust, and I think that actually helps them out too because if there are other options out there, they don't have to sign that $15 million a year contract that people seem to think is okay. And for what it's worth, I think that this is going to be something that they maybe do have to explore. All this, it's been 2 or 3 weeks since we talked about Mitch Marner on the show. And I don't know if any of you out there are paying attention, but whenever people talk about Mitch Marner, they aren't talking about Detroit as a potential landing spot. They're talking about teams out west. They're talking about contenders in the East, not up and coming teams like the Red Wings. I think the most non-contendery team I see connected to them is the Blackhawks. And I think that's just kind of, they can, they're obviously a recognizable brand like the Red Wings, but they're Chicago. There's a different feel about Chicago than there is Detroit. But point being, if it's Mitch Marner or bust, I don't think that's going to happen. So it is good to know that there's a possibility of landing a player like Jason Robertson. And for what it's worth, I think he'd actually fit in the lineup better too, because they need a left winger. And that's the position Jason Robertson plays. So it is interesting. I would love to know what, obviously, if this is real or not, and also what Dallas is looking for. As many smart people out there have pointed out, I don't think Dallas is looking for, a really high-end player in return. They're trying to shed salary here. Decent chance that they are looking for just kind of young players on cheap contracts and maybe a premium pick or two. And boy, do the Red Wings have that. So if this is a plausible or a legitimate thing that the Red Wings could pursue, and it's a legitimate opportunity, I dare say they should pursue this more than they should pursue any of those high-end guys in free agency. The cost is probably just going to be a bit more easy to stomach.
To piggyback off of that, we've covered at least the benefit of Jason Robertson coming to the Red Wings if the trade has worked out. And just to recap, like the goal scoring, he has a 40-goal season under his belt, actually multiple, I think, 100-point campaign under his belt. Still relatively young as well, 25. And there's another year left on his contract. He'll be a restricted free agent after that. And then that's like the last summer he can be a restricted free agent. If he signs a 1-year deal, he'll be a UFA the year after. Or if he signs a long-term deal, beyond that, then, great. But on the flip side, just other things to be conscious of when thinking like, oh, I want that player, or I want that player. But with Robertson, there is that contract, right? So you're going to have to sign him to, if the Red Wings acquire him, they're going to have to sign him long-term. Otherwise, it's like, what was the point? So you're signing him to a 7 or 8, likely 8-year deal. It's going to be north of 10 million. It's going to be close to 12 million probably. And is that something that the team wants to do? Now, mind you, the salary cap's going to keep going up and up and up. So that number is going to be, it sounds like a lot, but, comparatively speaking, it'd be manageable for the Red Wings, especially with money coming off the books in the future. But again, something to be conscious of. Secondly, he's not the fastest player. He is more of a east-west guy than a north-south guy. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. It works for him. Like, he can find the soft spots and he can score, and he has a great shot. But I think it just depends on, like, what do the Red Wings want their identity to be? Do they want to be like a high-skill team that you're not like overly physical, you're not overly fast, but you're skilled and you know where to be? Or do you want to be more of an in-your-face team? And, you could go either way, but I can't help but see how Florida has been playing in the Stanley Cup Finals and wonder, like, maybe there's something there. And I think that's probably more Todd McLellan style. So, again, if you're considering Jason Robertson, these factors have to be evaluated to see if it's actually the best fit. You weigh the acquisition cost against another player like a JJ Peterka, who, frankly, I think would be an even better fit. Or you try your luck in free agency with a Marner or a Sam Bennett or Nikolai Ehlers, and hopefully the Red Wings get one elite forward this offseason because they desperately need it. That is like the top priority this summer. And yeah, 2 would be great. And if Patrick Kane's the second one, that's fine with me as long as they get a first one.
Hypothetically, if you're Steve Yzerman, what would you offer for Jason Robertson's services?
Man.
Yeah, let me reframe that question. What prospects are you willing to part with for Jason Robertson's services? Because I'm in the boat where it's probably ASP is my only untouchable prospect, and I wouldn't move Marco Kasper either, but I think every other prospect could be available in a deal for that, and that's what they're going to ask for. They'll probably start with Marco Kasper, and you're looking at a first and a second and maybe another position and another roster player.
Yeah, that sounds about right. You probably want to have some conversation about a contract with Robertson and his agent before you make that move. But let's say like a protected first next year, Danielson, and I don't know, Berggren's a cheap player. Start with that and then add in like a second or like a mid-tier prospect or something like that. I think you're in the neighborhood, especially if they're trying to keep cap space open. But it's such a conundrum because it's like you do that or maybe Sam Bennett's available. But maybe you don't know. He could re-sign before July 1st and after the draft, where a trade would likely go down for Robertson. You just don't know. Now, like, is Steve Yzerman much of a gambler? Like, does he have a FanDuel account? I don't know. But that would be a risky proposition. Passing up on the trade market around the draft time to pursue free agents and then hoping that one of the elite players gets there. And like, before I go any further there, I do want to say, I do think the Red Wings should, at the very least, try to either lock down a top 4 defenseman or a top 6 forward through trade before they even reach free agency. Like, check that thing off the list before you get to free agency even happens. Like, just due to the sheer volume of players available that kind of fit that category, those two categories in free agency, get out ahead of it. Like cross it off the to-do list before free agency starts, and then you have less to do. You can focus your resources elsewhere. But yeah, it's gonna be a fun offseason, let me tell you, because it just between the rising salary cap, the trade market, the not super top heavy free agent class, and where the Red Wings are, like this whole offseason can go a number of ways.
I think Sam Bennett's going to be grossly overpaid after these playoffs, and I'm kind of hoping that the Red Wings kind of stay away from that. I'm not sure that contract will age well.
It's something they need, though.
Yeah. I really like your call out, Evan, of Mason Marchment. I agree with your assessment that he's kind of that type of player that they should at least be investigating. And I think that he kind of would help fill their need for scrappiness and whatnot. And he's a left winger, and he's not due for a giant payday like Jason Robertson is, and you aren't going to have to give up all the premium assets that you would for Jason Robertson. Completely different players are going to have completely different impact, I realize, but I think that this is a situation where you absolutely kick the tires on Robertson. You got to see what's going on there, but I think you can be a little tactful with kind of picking apart Dallas here, and they've got a player that fills a need. Like we're saying here, Sam Bennett is probably like your preferred option. It's not. I don't necessarily think it's a horrible thing if you end up with Mason Marchment instead. And you're not going to be paying him some obscene amount of money either, at least in the first year.
No, and I guess one other consideration too is that obviously the Red Wings aren't the only team out there that would be interested in Robertson or helping Dallas alleviate their cap problem. It does help that Yzerman and Nil have a pre-existing relationship, and they've linked up on trades in the past. So that matters for something. It just, will Yzerman be one of the first calls that Nil makes? I'm not quite sure. But yeah, I mean, whether it's Marchment, whether it's, Alexander Romanov or JJ Peterka, a main thing for, or Sam Bennett too, like a main thing for me is the Red Wings need more tone setters. And that's like one of the key takeaways I've had from watching the game one of the Stanley Cup Finals on Wednesday night. It's just when you get to the playoffs and you're in the, whether it's a home game or you're on the road in game one, like the place is absolutely electric. And like, you want those first shifts to be like, well, tone setting for the rest of the series. And the Red Wings really don't have any players like that. Like, you're not going to see Michael Rasmussen absolutely plaster a guy into the wall. Ben Sherratt, maybe, but like, if you're looking for someone to just drill a defenseman off of a forecheck, I don't think the Red Wings really have any players that fit that description. And watching the game, there's Corey Perry, there's Sam Bennett, there's Trent Frederick, Brad Marchand, Keith Tkachuk, Matthew Tkachuk, and there are all these players on both sides of the finals that are like those, Evander Kane as well. These guys that will just go out and light someone up and also, get into the dirty areas and score. And they're not just like bullies out there, but like they set the tone for the rest of the game, for the rest of the series. And that is a sorely needed element that, is missing from the Red Wings right now.
I'll even kind of tack onto that too. I mean, the Red Wings, it's not like the Red Wings have been lacking guys that are willing to drop the gloves and stand up for their teammates and stuff like that over their last couple of years. I mean, Klim Kostin was brought in a couple of years ago to fill that exact role. The difference between the guys that they've been adding and the guys that we're seeing in Edmonton and Florida is that Klim Kostin wasn't a top six forward, and he wasn't going to play that role. The Matthew Tkachuks of the world and players of that ilk, Brad Marchand, those guys, yes, they will piss you off and they'll be physical and they'll go to the dirty areas, but they can also produce at a top 6 level. And that is what the Red Wings need. They don't just need guys that can hit. They need guys that can hit and be useful in a top 6 role. So I agree, Tony. I think that there's definitely a need for physicality with this team. I think, just listening to the Yzerman McClellan presser really kind of hammered that home for me. But also to see it in action in the final here, it's both teams have those types of guys. Both teams have those types of guys high in their lineup, and it's. I mean, everybody always talk about it. That brand of hockey is playoff hockey. And if the Red Wings not only want to get to the playoffs, but actually do something once they're there, they're going to need these types of guys. You hope that a Carter Mazur could be that in time. You hope that a Nate Danielson could at least be frustrating to play against in times. We've seen that out of Marco Kasper at times this season, but there's being hard to play against, and then there's just being like a pain in the what. And the Red Wings need some pains in the butts on their team.
I mean, it's both, right? They need to be hard to play against, first of all. And second of all, yeah, they need those players, those tone setters. And they don't have either, really. And it kind of goes back to what McClellan was saying during his end-of-year presser about playing to win instead of playing to score. And those players that we mentioned, those players do all the things separate from, having the puck on their stick to win. And now, Dallas, maybe Mason Marchment is one of those guys. If you look at the LA Kings, McClellan's old club, they may be looking to free up some cap space as well. You got to look at Trevor Moore, Warren Fogle will be a great addition. If they're willing to deal Alex Laferriere, who I brought up a couple episodes ago, all those players play winning brands of hockey as well. And that's what the Red Wings need throughout their lineup. And I do think there's some opportunity there to not only add ideally a top 6 top line forward who can do that, but also further down in the lineup too. Hell, even Michael Bunting would be a fine addition for the Red Wings if Nashville wants to move him out after a so-so audition there after a late season trade. But yeah, I mean, it's getting to high danger chances was already a problem, but if they have more of these players, it'll be less of a problem.
File this under things I thought I would never say, but watching game 1 and just watching Brad Marchand get under the skin of players on the Oilers, he's the rat. I think maybe it's because he's on Florida now and not in Boston is why I'm kind of coming around on the idea. 37 years old, though. Man, if you could get him on a 1-year, 2-year deal, but I think teams that are closer to cup contention are going to want a player of his ilk. But I don't know what it is. Why am I coming around on Brad Marchand? I feel dirty, like I need to go take a shower or something. But I do want to circle back to something you said, and a player that I really like and I want to discuss a little bit more on, Tony, is JJ Peterka. He was a guy I was hoping the Red Wings were going to target in his draft year. What do you think it would take to get someone like Peterka to Detroit if Buffalo does make him available?
Sure, they'll ask for Marco Kasper again, like they did when the Red Wings were kicking tires on Dylan Cousins, but probably be either Danielson or Kasper plus something else for JJ Peterka, just because of what he brings to the table. And that's a lot of goals. He had 28 in the 2023-24 season, and then 27 last year, 68 points last year in his third full NHL season. I mean, that's pretty solid. He's still only 23. It'd be nice for Moritz Seider to have a German buddy in the organization. But, for those who say, I don't know, Buffalo will trade in division. I mean, they did with Cousins. Whether it's, Robertson or Peterka, you have to imagine the Red Wings would have to part with one of Sandy and Pellica, Danielson, or Kasper just to get the deal done. That's a non-starter. If they can somehow get a player of that caliber without one of those 3 prospects, that's fantastic. You already won the trade if that's the case. So it's going to be costly regardless of who the Red Wings acquire. if it was up to me, I would probably try. I mean, I certainly want to kick tires on those two, but yeah, it's like you don't see players like Robertson or Paterka on the trade block too often. But like, is the cost too much? And like, would it be better to add like a complementary style player to the top line with Larkin and Raymond, like a Brian Rust type of player, or a Chris Kreider type of player, to not be the best player on the line, but just to have a role on the line, like kind of what Marco Kasper was doing when he was on the left side there. They wouldn't cost as much, and that's obviously a good thing. Red Wings have more assets to add someone on a defense that they want, like a Nick Hague or Alexander Romanov. But you really could go like any number of ways with off-season additions for the Red Wings, between trade chips or free agents this summer.
I'm not moving ASP or Casper for either of those guys. They're untouchable for me. Comes down to cost, long term, the timeline, and especially after watching Casper at the Worlds, can't do it. The hype on ASP is too much for me, and I don't want to do a podcast 3 years from now and talking about why the hell we trade ASP. The hype is there. The hype looks real. I mean,
we've all been covering this team for a while, like individually. I can't remember an off season where there was so much up in the air. I really can't. Like, I feel like in the past, at least in the most recently, it's been somewhat predictable with what Yzerman would pursue, kind of slowly but surely, stockpile prospects. But now, like, this new era with McClellan wanting to have his own team. Yzerman has said he's willing to be aggressive. Obviously been out of the playoffs for a while, and he thought the team was good enough to make the playoffs this past season. Like, I don't know, man. Like, I could give you 1,000 different ways this could all play out, and it'll probably not be any of those. It could be something completely else.
I think Nick Hague's an interesting one too. I'm curious what it would take to get a player of his caliber. I definitely think they need to do something in that top four, and I think that's probably what we're going to end up seeing this summer.
It's another team that could use cap space too,
especially if it's true, because you've heard rumors about Marner in Vegas.
Yeah,
it's we're not even close to the draft yet. I mean, we're 3.5 weeks away, but I'm already tired of the Mitch Marner talk. I think someone's going to give him maybe 15, closer to 16, if possible. Is that in the best interest for the Red Wings? I don't know.
Red Wings just completely take Marner off their board and then just pull good players from all the teams that want to get them, so they have the cap space for it.
I like the Romanov too. The Romanov it could be a decent addition. Dobson's going to cost way too much money, but a Romanov and a Hague, boom. I'm happy with that kind of summer. And all of this because of one cryptic tweet by Kevin Weeks with eye emojis. We should start putting out tweets with eye emojis just to see what happens. I read some article today that had like 7 different scenarios of interpreting the Kevin Weeks tweet. All I put was eye emojis over the American Airlines Arena. That was it. Sent Twitter into a frenzy. It was a shit show. Let's shift gears now and get into this week's prospect profile, brought to you by our very own Devin Little. This week, we're going to take a look at Swedish winger Victor Eklund. Devin, this is your show now. Take it away.
Nobody wants this if it's just my show. Victor Eklund is, in one word, stupendous. He is he's an interesting prospect because really going back to the beginning of this draft cycle, he's kind of consistently been one of those guys who's been viewed as one of the top prospects in this class. And in fact, to be quite candid, I really did not think, even 2 months ago, that this would be a player that it would even be logical to talk about as a Red Wings draft target, just because I didn't really think he would be available. I thought he'd go 8, 9, 10th overall, and the Red Wings I mean, at one point in time, we're supposed to pick 12th overall. Now they're picking 13th. But alas, here we are. And honestly, you don't have to go too far to find mock drafts that have the Red Wings picking Victor Eklund at 13th overall. And that's kind of why I decided this is a guy we got to talk about here. Obviously Swedish. The name maybe sounds familiar. His brother William was a pick in the 2021 draft, actually the 7th overall pick. So one pick after the Red Wings chose Simon Edvinsson at 6th overall. He's over there with the San Jose Sharks. Victor has some similarities to his brother. I was a big William Eklund guy back in 2021. I'm a really big Victor Eklund guy this year. They both are really good playmakers. Victor Eklund already kind of shows an ability to kind of control the pace of the game. And I think that's something, we see that with like Patrick Kane. And that's one of the things that kind of sets him apart from the rest is he knows how to control the pace of the game. And you're starting to see Lucas Raymond have that ability as well. And if Eklund's already showing that ability, I can't imagine what he's going to look like, 3, 4, 5 years from now when he's had time to really develop that skill and maybe work with players like Patrick Kane and Lucas Raymond. A lot of people will kind of see his profile and think he's that soft perimeter Swede that likes to make plays from the perimeter and doesn't really get involved. But he's a little ball of energy. Do not get that misconstrued. In fact, he has a lot of those trademark Red Wings traits that they look for in prospects. High effort, plays at both ends of the ice. I think he has a solid foundation defensively. Wouldn't call him a two-way forward per se, but I think that the tools are there for him to be one in the future. And he definitely is not afraid to engage along the boards. He will fight for pucks. He likes to have the puck on a stick, and he understands that sometimes the puck's not going to find you. You have to go find the puck. So, if anyone out there is telling you that he's a soft Swede, they do not have their facts right. I'm going to tell you right now. Eklund, I think, very much has the potential to be a legitimate top 6 forward in the NHL, maybe a perennial 60, 70 point guy. I think he maybe has a bit more of a scoring touch than his brother did at his age. That gets me excited considering the Red Wings could now, they could use more playmakers, but they could really use a guy that is proficient at putting the puck in the net. And I think that Eklund has those skills. A major drawback or maybe point of concern about him is that he was maybe a little too efficient at scoring goals this year in the Allsvenskan League, which is basically Sweden's AHL. He had a really high shooting percentage, and when you see that, you kind of just assume there's going to be regression, and so you kind of wonder, what does regression look like for this player? And I think that's maybe one of the reasons why you're starting to see him slip on mock drafts and into the Red Wings lap. But quite frankly, even if there is some regression in shooting percentages, I think he does enough right offensively to where the points will come one way or another, whether he's scoring goals or creating plays. In case you can't tell, I really like this player. Quite frankly, I don't really care who else is on the board. If Victor Eklund's on the board at 13th overall, you take the player and then you figure out the rest later, because this is one of those cases where you take best player available, and I do think that's Victor Eklund. There's obviously all the Swedish connections. He'd fit right in with the future core of this team. I think he'd look really good playing with Lucas Raymond. I kind of foresee a line of Eklund, Marco Kasper, and Raymond, and that gets me excited. That would be such a fun line to watch. I know when we first started these, I kind of said Jackson Smith might be my guy, and don't get me wrong, still have all the time in the world for that kid. A lot of other guys we've talked about, plenty of good prospects that should be in the Red Wings range this year. But like I said, I didn't think Victor Eklund would even be a possibility here. If he is, he's got to be the pick in my mind.
What do you think a timeline is for him? He's definitely going to have to add some weight to his frame. He's at 161 pounds, 5'11".
For sure. He is built almost exactly like me, and I'm going to tell you right now, I would not survive in the NHL. So I do think he'll need to obviously gain some strength. That takes time. That takes just getting older, maturing, and whatnot. I think, and I know there's going to be a lot of people out there that hate to hear this because they want some instant gratification now, but I do think he's at least 2 years away. I think you give him another year over in Sweden, you probably bring him over, give him the year in Grand Rapids, and then you go from there. I don't see that as a bad thing. I think that we've seen that work just fine for Marco Kasper, Simon Edmondson, etc. And if he does, if he is going to be the player that I think he's going to be, it's going to be well worth the wait.
Well, we've reached the point where I throw out some names and you tell me which you prefer. It's going to be a gauntlet this time, Devin, I won't lie. So,
oh boy,
lots of names to throw out. And first off, we'll start with Victor Eklund or Carter Bear.
Victor Eklund.
All right. How about your boy Victor Eklund versus your boy Jackson Smith?
It's Victor Eklund. I stand by my thought that like it would be really, really good to theoretically kind of lock up your top four by picking a left-handed defenseman like Smith. But man, you can't leave Eklund's potential on the board.
What about my guy, Kayshawn Aitchison versus Victor Eklund?
Again, same idea too. And Atchison brings all that physicality we were talking about just a little bit ago as well, but it's got to be Eklund.
All right. So we'll look at a couple more forwards here. Victor Eklund or Brady Martin?
Victor Eklund.
All right. How about Victor Eklund or Roger McLean?
Now we're talking.
Either.
This is where my personal bias comes out. It's going to be Eklund, and it's because I do like my European players. I think we'd probably need to talk about McQueen on this podcast because he's an interesting one. I'm going to go with Eklund, though.
All right. And then last one, only a slight chance that he falls, but still a quality player and someone who has the Red Wings DNA. Victor Eklund or Jake O'Brien?
You're darn right about that.
Cue the
another player that I think I mentioned I really, really like at the 13th spot. But yeah, again, I'm gonna go with Eklund. I'm not gonna lie, these last 3 or 4 have been a little bit tougher, but I'm sticking with my boy Eklund.
Wow. Me personally, I mean, I don't see Jake O'Brien falling to the Red Wings, but I would put him above Victor Eklund, but just by the slimmest of margins. Roger McQueen, that's definitely an interesting one that we'll have to cover more in depth because it is kind of an interesting scenario there. But I mean, if Victor Eklund falls to the Red Wings, I know you'll be happy. I'll be happy. Evan probably will be happy.
I'm okay with it.
Yeah, and I'm sure a lot of Red Wings fans will be happy with that pick.
Is that the first unanimous player selection for Devin? Because I think everyone we've done with all of them, like it comes down to one guy, and then once you get to the Victor Eklund, it's always been okay, Victor Eklund then for every prospect we talked about. So that's Devin's guy, and we're gonna find out soon here. I mean, the draft is June 27th already, so that's what 3 weeks away. It's coming fast too, and I love this time of year every year where these guys you think that are going to go higher. I mean, last year I was actually at the draft and seeing Z Boom drop was kind of crazy for me. And there's always that chance that these bigger names can drop. You never know what these organizations are thinking. You don't know the medicals. You see what you see at the combine, but a guy like Victor Eklund, I see more and more mock drafts that I'm looking at. He's not in the top 10, and once you get out of that top 10, and even the top 10's not even settled yet, but he could be a guy that the Red Wings will be available there at 13.
I think there's probably the first 6, maybe 7 picks are probably pretty set, but then from like 8 to 15 could be any sort of combination. So I'm that's why we're covering so many players. Is it could be anyone, and might as well be prepared just in case, right?
Okay, moving along here. We saw this week on a tweet from Hockey News Hub, per Artur Kaurulian, I had to read that off, guys, because there's no way I'm going to pronounce that, and I highly doubt either of you can either. Dmitri Buchelnikov may leave Detroit if Vitez is removed from the KHL as they're having some financial concerns. In that case, Buchelnikov would become a restricted free agent in the KHL, which would make his transition to North America a little more convenient for the Red Wings organization. Now, Tony, you also sent out another tweet to us today that kind of showed a conflicting report with Buchelnikov's agent. Can you explain what you saw and what we can read into it from what you can take from that?
Sure. So, I mean, yeah, there's been a few things flying around, but there's a rumor about Buchelnikov's club possibly, dissolving or being relegated, or something happening where if that happens, then it makes him a free agent. That would just be the impact on his contract. And if it's a free agent, he's free to come over to North America immediately. So as you can imagine, people got hyped about that. Later, another article came out that included a quote from Buchelnikov's agent, Igor Perishkin, that basically said he hadn't heard anything in that regard, and that he has a contract and there's not really anything to discuss. So then I was like, oh, okay, this is a big nothing burger. Cool. And then another tweet came out that there was a KHL team rumored to be interested in trading for Buchelnikov, and that would potentially mean having an even longer contract in the KHL and delaying, his arrival in Detroit. So, main takeaway here is there's been no change. There really hasn't. I mean, there's rumors going around, and we'll see if any of them come to fruition, but nothing's changed. So, as far as Buchelnikov's potential arrival in Detroit, we're looking at the end of next season, and that's how it has been. But again, it's something to monitor, and if circumstances do change, then we'll see what happens. But I do think when Buchelnikov does come over, he'll have quite a bit of value to add for the Red Wings. When you say so, Devin?
Yeah, I'd say so. Buchelnikov, there's a reason why people are very excited at the idea of Buchelnikov joining the Red Wings, or at least, making the trip over here to North America. He's a very skilled player, and in fact, he kind of stands out amongst the Red Wings prospect pool because, well, I wouldn't say he's like a soft player per se. He doesn't necessarily check all those boxes that, like I was saying earlier, those patented Red Wing traits. I don't know that he has all of them. And I think that's okay. I think that he is a player that, at his best, likes to be involved with everything his team does, especially in the offensive end. He wants to score goals, or he wants to create goals. It's a really good trait to have. And as he has played more and developed and really kind of gotten comfortable playing over there in the KHL, he's gotten better and better and produced more and more. He's a player that understands time and space. He's a player that understands the puck has to go to the net. I know that sounds silly, but basically what I'm saying is he's not really a perimeter player. And he's a player that is just as willing to kind of like piggyback off of what I just said. He's a player that is just as willing to score the goals as he is to set them up. He ultimately just wants the puck to go in the back of the net. A player that kind of gets brought up a lot in terms of a potential NHL comparison for him is Kirill Kaprizov over in Minnesota. If he is even 80% of the player Kirill Kaprizov is, that's a really good player, especially considering they got him in the second round. And even kind of thinking back to his draft year, I remember he was one of those picks where people were like, "Wait a minute, who? What? Where's draft reports? No one did reports on this kid." He kind of came out of nowhere, and now he's a top 10 prospect in this pool. I per my rankings back in January, and he's going to be there again when I do it again next month. Spoiler alert. He has the potential to be a legitimate top 6 forward in the NHL, a scoring forward that can do a little bit of anything in the offensive zone. And when the day does come, hopefully that he does come to North America, I expect him to kind of show his stuff almost immediately. I think he has really high offensive potential, and that's kind of his key to being successful at the NHL level.
It's also nice to point out that he did win the KHL Fastest Skater Challenge in the KHL's version of the All-Star Game. So he's a guy that's going to add speed to the Red Wings lineup when he is ready to make that transition. He was also, at 21 years old, he was also 1 point shy of tying for the most points for an under 22 player in the KHL all time. And that's with some pretty nice company. Let's talk Jesse Kiiskinen, 19-year-old Finnish prospect, signed his ELC with the Red Wings this week. We remember last year he was acquired in a trade with the Nashville Predators for former second-round pick Andrew Gibson, a defenseman. Kind of a head-scratching move at the time. Andrew Gibson was somewhat of a decent prospect for the Red Wings, but this past season, it kind of feels like the two prospects kind of flipped spots with Kiiskinen having a better 2024-25 season. Devin, what can you tell us about Kiiskinen, and what does this move mean for Detroit? He has said he will not be coming over to North America this season, as he will stay over in Finland. What do you got for us?
A little bit of a bummer too, because I know that was like my immediate thought was, oh man, there's a potential that Grand Rapids gets another really cool prospect for me to watch. But alas, I guess it's okay if he stays in Finland for another year. Kiiskinen, the big thing that kind of caught my attention, I guess I wasn't aware of, was in his little announcement, kind of saying, thank you for the contract, and he's excited to get started, and blah blah blah. Red Wings are his favorite team growing up. Love it when that happens. I think that just means he's going to have a lot of pride to wear the winged wheel, and I think he's going to, work real hard to make that a reality. And speaking of working hard, I think that's kind of one of the trademarks of his game. It's, again, go figure, kind of has a lot of those Red Wings traits. He works hard, doesn't take a shift off, hard to play against, is involved at both ends of the ice. And but don't get me wrong, he's not just kind of that underrated skill guy. He definitely does know how to create points, and I think that I love the kind of setup here talking about the trade, because I know when it did go down, I know I was a little bummed out. I really liked Andrew Gibson, and I still do. I feel like he definitely still has NHL potential there, but you're right. I think that they've kind of swapped, and I think kind of crazy to think that the Red Wings not only got Kiiskinen for Gibson, they also got a second-round pick. Now, we all know what happened with that second-round pick, and I'd prefer not to bring it up. But point is that just on face value, the Red Wings won that deal. Holy cow. I think Kiiskinen is going to be a player who brings some similar traits as guys in the prospect pool, but also maybe something a little different. He's not a carbon copy of other guys at his position. I think that this is proof that the organization obviously has liked what they've seen from him. He did have a really good season. And I think that, obviously he's not coming to North America this season, but I think that you can probably maybe start to speculate that he'll be in Grand Rapids, not next season, but the following season. You sign an ELC, you kind of assume that eventually he's going to make it over to Michigan, whether it's in the first year or the second year. So, like I said, a little bit of a bummer. He's not going to be in Grand Rapids next year, but this means that he's officially a prospect. He's got a contract. He's in the system. He's going to work his way up. And now excited to kind of monitor him over the next few years.
Yeah, 44 points in 46 games with HPK in the Finland's top men's league, and those were the most of any under 20 skater in Finland's league. So he's definitely an exciting prospect to watch, and someone we're going to keep on our eye on for the future. All right, guys, quick thoughts here. Last night, Stanley Cup Finals, Game 1, takeaways. Pretty entertaining game. Didn't really expect the Oilers to come out and dominate the Panthers like that. What did you see out of that one, Tony?
What I was saying earlier, that there are tone setters on both sides of the puck, and God, the Red Wings need players like that. That was my main takeaway. That and Sam Bennett would be the perfect fit.
Devin?
My big takeaway is that it is really fun watching these. I mean, we've been doing this for years at this point, but it's really kind of coming in, or I'm really starting to kind of wrap my head around just how fun it is to watch good hockey teams, especially ones that you don't have an investment in for one reason or another. Obviously, this is a rematch of last year. I'm really excited for that element of it. These teams already are familiar with each other. There's maybe going to be an added level of hate. I love playoff series that have that little bit of hate, quite frankly. And I think that to kind of piggyback off your point there, Tony, both teams have guys that are willing to play into it too. So I think this is going to be a really entertaining series. And I think that game one was kind of just a microcosm of what we can expect for the rest of the series.
My quick thought is, where the hell did Kasperi Kapanen come from? I mean, he's just looked electric in the playoffs, and he totally had Bobrovsky beat for the game winner there. If you could have gotten 5-hole there, but man, that guy he just shows up at the right time. It's crazy.
And to think he was part of the early Toronto Maple Leafs, core years with Matthews and Marner and Nylander, and he could have been the difference for all we know. Just a couple quick notes before we close out. Jay Varady, Red Wings assistant coach, took a job under Rick Tocchet in Philadelphia, so the Red Wings have an opening there. Jay Woodcroft, that will be a nice addition. Hopefully improve Detroit's offense. Also, guys, we made it through a whole podcast without mentioning how I broke the news of Ovechkin retiring at the end of the 2025-26 season, only for the Caps PR to put out a statement about the sales rep who reached out to me about how that was inaccurate information he alluded to. Now, again, it got rebutted, but since then, Ovechkin's wife went on a podcast and kind of said the same thing, that after this season, they're going to go back to Russia. So if I broke the news of his retirement, I mean,
I didn't even see this. Where was this? When did you do this?
It was Friday last week. Like, as I was listening to, you guys record with Hockey Town of Westfall out. I had a Capital season ticket sales rep, email me as part of a listserv with some, summer events that they're trying to sell tickets to and stuff. And said and then in October, Alex Ovechkin's final NHL season. So I took a screenshot of that on my way home from daycare and just oh, well, big news, posted that and forgot about it. And then I look at my phone at noon and it's blown up. Literally, PR put out a tweet being we've seen, reports about this. Sales rep misconstrued things. We have made no decision beyond this upcoming season. There will be no further comment. And people are like, yeah, sure.
You and Kevin Weeks, man, just burning up Twitter, dude. Jesus. I missed that one. And to go back to your point there, we had a great time with Hockey Town West podcast last week. And once again, I wanted to thank those guys. That was a long one. I think that was our longest podcast. And I'm sure you guys knew when I sent you the info at 5:30 in the morning, my time. You guys were probably on your way to work while I was finishing up. But it was a great time with those guys. And I really appreciate that. And we hope to do that again in the future with them. Appreciate you guys, but it's, this is probably my first podcast on the Flying Octopod, doing it without a hat. So I appreciate you guys putting out with that. It's very humid out here in Los Angeles. And as you can see, it's also affected my ring around the collar. So with that said, sorry, dude, I got to throw in some crappy joke before we end this show. But once again, thanks for listening. And one more time, remind everyone where you can find us. Flying Octopod on Twitter, at The Flying Octopod on YouTube, iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you next week.
Thanks for listening to the Flying Octopus Podcast. Follow us on YouTube at the Flying Octopus channel and Twitter at Flying Octopod.